Hi, everybody. This is episode 82 of the Catholics Against Militarism podcast, and I'm going to post part 3 next of my interview with Father McCarthy on the Israeli-Gaza war. But I thought this little segment might be an interesting segue from part 2 to part 3, because in part 2 with Father McCarthy, we were talking a little bit about evil versus sin, and in episode 77, I did a reaction video to a video that Trent Horn made about the dropping of the atomic bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And in that reaction video, I kept bringing up this idea of intrinsic evil because he was using that term a lot in his video. Now, the best thing to do if you're interested in finding out more about this definition of intrinsic evil would be to go get a catechism and look it up. Catechism, everyone should have a Catholic catechism in their house where they can look these things up and get better informed. I don't teach theology on this podcast. However, this idea of intrinsic evil was on my mind after I did episode 77, and it kind of came back to my mind after I was editing the interview with Father McCarthy. So I thought I would share with you an email that I got from Father McCarthy, because I asked him, can you clarify this idea of intrinsic evil? Because I thought I had read something that he wrote about it in the past that was really kind of made me start thinking about it. He couldn't find anything that he had written about it, but he did write me a fresh email in answer to my question. So I just wanted to share that in case anybody might find it helpful. So Father McCarthy wrote, "The idea of intrinsic evil is not very complex or difficult to understand on the surface. In Catholic moral theology, a human act is a chosen thought, word, or deed, depending on one's consciousness and conscience. A particular act is evaluated as either a good act or bad act. Most acts for most people are good or evil, depending on a person's moral nurturing, their intention in performing the act, and to some degree the circumstances they are in at the moment a decision has to be made. The Catholic Church teaches that there are chosen thoughts, words, and deeds that are always and everywhere and under all circumstances intrinsically evil, that can never be good, regardless of intention or circumstances. It lists some of these acts: the unjustified killing of a human being, lying, fornication, adultery, artificial contraception, masturbation, abortion, with Pope John Paul II adding slavery and torture to the list. The idea here is that no matter what good a person may derive from them or intend, they are never morally permissible. The gravity of the evil involved in the choice of an intrinsic evil ranges from grave evil, mortal sin in the Catholic vernacular, to serious evil but not mortal sin. So the idea of intrinsic evil is not very complex or difficult to understand on the surface. Its complexity and even spiritual danger can perhaps be illustrated by this paragraph from John L. Mackenzie. So this is, John L. Mackenzie was a preeminent theologian of the mid-20th century, and this is a quote from him. Quote, "Like all my contemporaries on seminary faculties, I had been reared on the ethics of the just war. ... We were all taught the traditional Catholic morality that while killing a person is morally neutral, betting him or her is intrinsically evil. We may find reasons for doing away with the person, but we can never find a moral justification for betting the person except marriage. There is something fallacious about the thinking which finds illicit sexual relations intrinsically evil, but killing people morally neutral. All you need is a sufficiently good reason. Why that does not work for sexual intercourse, I do not know. ... I never thought I would live long enough to see carnal intercourse become as morally neutral as killing. Modern science and philosophy have made of carnal intercourse a, quote, meaningful interpersonal relations, unquote. To me, the meaningful interpersonal relations is just as phony a piece of morality as the just war theory. I call them both phony." Unquote. This is back to Father McCarthy's email. The complexity begins to raise its head when the question is asked, who decides what is intrinsically evil and what is not? What is gravely intrinsically evil and what is only seriously intrinsically evil? Until John Paul II made slavery and torture intrinsically grave evils in 1996, They were both permitted and practiced by the Church for 1,000+ years. So who decides for the Catholic or Christian what is always an intrinsically evil act and what is not? The obvious answer is Jesus, in the Gospels, decided. Who is in a superior position to him to decide such a matter? He reveals what is the will of the Father and what is not, what is good and what is evil and what is not. Once someone else becomes the decider of good and evil other than Jesus, the barn door is opened. Then there is no end and no standard for determining with authority what is an intrinsic evil and what is not. Yet I believe the idea behind it is correct, although I would drop this particular phraseology and thoroughly examine how much what is called intrinsic evil or good is a byproduct of Stoic philosophy and not the teaching of Jesus. Finally, this is one of the moral categories in the Church, like primacy of conscience or the primacy of love in Jesus' teachings, that opens the door to a landmine-laced field of interpretations in self-interest under the auspices of primary of conscience or love, if the surrounding moral theology structures that support and generate these categories is not known. There's much more to consider in theory and in practice regarding this intrinsic evil designation, but it does potentially contain a tsunami of spiritual destruction once a Catholic goes beyond its superficial meaning. It can become a logical swamp of self-deception, conservative and liberal. The only alternative to intrinsic evil morality is the universality of situation ethics. Hope this is a little clarification of thought and helpful. Ellen, Charlie. So that was Charlie's answer. For any of those of you who might find it interesting, feel free to leave a comment if you have something further to add or your own thoughts or ideas on this matter. All right, thanks, and I'll see you next time.